think we're ready to go. Are you seeing the full slide from your perspective?
Yes, but I can see PowerPoint and all its menus. So I don't just see the slide. I see.
There we go.
There we go. Now we're rocking and rolling.
All right. So anyway, hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the broadcast. I'm really excited to be able to spend some time with Tom Deierlein. By the way, I am not Hollis Thomas, as you might have noticed. Certainly much better looking than I am. Spider-Gram, and it's really my pleasure to be able to step in for Hollis this week and next week as she takes a well-needed vacation, and to catch up with some folks who I think are doing just remarkable things. And one of those people is Tom Deierlein, which we're going to get a chance to meet Tom up close and personal. Let's jump on in here. Okay, enough of the slide. Hey, there we go.
There we go.
There we go. So the challenge that we are all up against is the idea that, whoops, let me just make that go away. Okay, there we go. We're all dealing with this constant idea of evolution. And as we evolve, as we change through our lives, whether it's through the aging process, whether it's through things that happen in our lives, there are things that inspire us, there are things that motivate us, and there are things that kind of put us in a position to go, what just happened? And trying to figure out from that point on. So the person I want to spend some time with tonight and share with you is a friend of mine, Tom Deierlein. And Tom and I have worked in the same industry, which is the digital media side of the world, for a number of years. Tom has since moved toward other greener pastures, one might say. But Tom has a fascinating story, and we got a chance to catch up a little bit yesterday. And I think what I want to talk about is Tom's, not only his reinvention, but Tom's initial invention. We'll call it Tom 1.0. And then Tom had to kind of go through an uninvention, which is kind of a unique process in itself before he was able to get to his invention. Anyway, Tom, say something. Let's get your face up on the screen so people don't have to look at my mug, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
So, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to sharing my story and hopefully providing some helpful advice or some background that will help others in their own evolution and reinvention.
Now, I'm gonna say something with the possibility that I may end up embarrassing Tom horribly, and that is the word hero gets thrown around an awful lot in modern culture, in society, and I think, and you certainly can draw your own conclusions as we talk to Tom tonight, but Tom fits the persona of hero in my book, not only for what he was able to do in the armed forces as a member in uniform, but what he's done with that status and what he's been able to do as a civilian. So, Tom, I guess I want to kick it off. This is your story, but what I want to be able to do is kick it off, and let's just go back to kind of your salad days and entering West Point and your approach to the world and kind of what that journey looked like from that point. Tom, 1 point.
Yeah, why don't I do that? I'll just walk folks a little quickly through my story, and then you can dive in and ask additional qualifying questions. So, as you pointed out, it goes back to I always like to mention I'm 8 out of 9. So I'm one of 9 kids. I am 8 out of 9 of the Deierleins out of White Plains, New York. And when I was about 13 years old, a freshman in high school, I decided I want to go to West Point. And there was a number of different reasons why that was, but sort of that changed the course of my life. I mean, you and I earlier were talking about grit and 10,000 hours. I mean, I went from being a decent student to a straight A student, and being somewhat volunteer to very involved in my community, from being a member of the track team to being the captain of the track team. So that was a goal that drove me early on in life. I did go to West Point, class of 89. And in the summer of 85, when I got there, I figured out I wanted to be infantry. I wanted to be an airborne ranger. And then I spent the next 4 years, actually 5, it took me 5 years before I was able to see that goal. And so I graduated from West Point in 89. I went infantry. I was airborne. Took me 3 tries, but I made it through Ranger School. That's in the press a lot lately. There's 2 women that just made it through that school, so good on that. And they're both West Pointers as well. But when I was 13, I said, I want to, go to West Point. That'll be great. Then I'm going to go in the military for 5 years. And I saw it as like the bonus, not the obligation. I was like, and you get to go in the Army. Like that's the cool part. But then I figured I'd get out and have a successful business career. And what that was, I really didn't know, right? Like my dad got on the train, came back, there was macaroni and cheese on my plate. So, but at 25, there I was. Right now, I had gone in. I was with the Berlin Brigade, and it came time for me to either go on to the advanced course and try to be a company commander in the military, or get out. I got out. At the time, I went to work for Johnson & Johnson, selling surgical instruments like the minimally invasive endoscopic or laparoscopic instruments. And they were the most admired company in America. They had the credo. It was, just appealed to me. And I thought it was like kind of mailroom to boardroom. But I was really only there a year and a half. Company called me, said, "Hey, do you want to sell software?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, it's, mechanical engineering software." And I was a mechanical engineer undergrad. I was like, "Well, hell no." And they said, "Well, this is what it pays." I was like, "Oh, where do I fax my resume?" So 6 weeks later, I was working at Parametric Technology. And about a year and a half later, a good friend of mine, John Donnelly, had jumped onto a company called NetGravity. And so that's where you and I started to get together. So I was actually, starting in November of 96, I was at a company called NetGravity, which eventually went public, bought by DoubleClick. So it's technically part of Google now. Did that for 3 years, was knocking out my MBA at NYU part-time. Went to a company called Dynamic Logic, working for the two co-founders, Ronit Aviv and Nick Nine, and that was a great run. Most of the people that know me from digital media know me from there. There's certainly NetGravity folks out there. Grew that from about 7 folks to 125 and sold it off to WPP. And for the listeners here, that's one of the top 3 global marketing services companies in the world. And in 2005, we sold it to them in October, and this is where the story gets interesting. So if we remember, West Point Army got out for 12 years. So I left the military in 1993. In 2005, I got called back in. And that's what you were sort of referencing as the uninvention, right? So I had reinvented myself as a civilian and a successful sales and entrepreneur guy. And all of a sudden, one quick phone call, and I was like, oh, I got to unreinvent myself and go back to that warrior and become that airborne ranger again. And literally the day after I got that phone call that I had to go back in, I hit the gym. I wasn't a tough, 25-year-old hardened soldier. I was a 38-year-old beard-bellied has-been. Went in. Well, I was civil affairs, so I wasn't kicking down doors or chasing bad guys. I was doing what people are now calling, economic development, reconstruction, governance. I was there in 06, right after the first election. So I was like an executive coach for the newly elected government.
Is it safe to say you were a non-combatant in that sense, more of infrastructure support, or was it everything?
No, it's combat. Like we had rocket and mortar attacks that hit our building. I mean, it was go time. I was in Baghdad in a very bad time. Sure. But we focused on the non-combatants, and hence the name Civil Affairs. Like Civil Affairs is part of Special Operations Command, and it's a specialty branch, and that it really focuses on the non-combatants. So our job is to protect the civilians and sort of shape the battlefield to minimize any potential damage to folks. And you have missions like humanitarian aid, essential services. You're doing, like I said, mentioned reconstruction, foreign, mostly reconstruction. So for me, our main things were essential services. So sewer, water, electricity, trash, medical, schools. Like there was limited running water. There was only 2 hours of electricity. A lot of time trying to restart these various businesses that were state-owned and were now trying to go private. A lot of time with governance, so I spent a lot of time with the newly elected officials, and then a lot of reconstruction, like rebuilding schools and hospitals. And as many people recall, or maybe not, in 2006 in the summer, that we were trying to re-secure Baghdad. It had gone downhill. It was the failure of that mission, which was called Operation Together Forward 2, that led to the call for the surge and Petraeus going to Congress in the fall of 2006 and us putting 10,000 or 20, 30,000 more bodies into Baghdad to kind of re-secure it. Well, in September of 06, and I know this story is going on and on, September of 06, I got shot by a sniper. I was out, somebody had been shooting at some of my contractors, and I got out there, and there was obviously no sign of the folks that were shooting at them. I said, let's get out of here. And then boom, I got shot. So I spent the next 8 months at Walter Reed and then the Spinal Cord Polytrauma Center down in Tampa at the VA, and then returned to the business world in May of 2007. Still continue to do some work with WPP and Miller Brown. Was looking at some more entrepreneurial things again, and started Thundercat in about 2008. Still was involved in some digital media things. And then the other piece, it's a reinvention that I hope we spend a little bit of time talking about now. I mentioned when I was in Baghdad, we were doing humanitarian aid. Well, people from the digital media industry were shipping me school supplies and food and soccer balls and toys and vitamins. We were doing a lot of children's vitamins because malnutrition was a big issue. Well, after I got shot, a couple of my buddies, Bill Flatley, who was at Forbes at the time, Sean Finnegan, and Paul Bremer, started and ran a fundraiser, and we raised like 38 grand in one night. So even though I technically call myself a co-founder of the TD Foundation, it was really those three gentlemen that stepped up and formed the Tom Deierlein Foundation in the fall of 2006. Initially, we were helping children in Iraq. Then we were helping children in Iraq and Afghanistan. We did over 50 life-saving surgeries, over 200,000 in school supplies, over 25,000 in children's vitamins. You and I were talking about Walmart earlier. It was, Flintstones are $13 a bottle, or you can get the Walmart ones, 300 for $5. In the summer of 2013, so just about 26 months ago, we shifted the mission to also helping the children here in the United States, the children of wounded warriors and Gold Star families as well. And about 90% of our effort now is helping the children of wounded warriors and Gold Star families. And that's sort of what I've been up to.
Well, and the TD Foundation, which I want to talk a little bit more about, is a phenomenal organization. And as you said, a lot of traction over the past few years, and making a lot of differences in the lives of other people, foreign and local. I do want to get back to, not that you glossed over it, but obviously there's a little bit more traumatic. You posted something on your Facebook page this morning, which I think was incredibly impactful. Could you share that with the viewers, what you actually posted?
Oh, the best thing that ever happened to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we are having a drink. And I am drinking vodka with a splash of mixed berry Mott's Tots. I grabbed some of my kids' Mott's Tots from the fridge to take the edge off my vodka. But yeah, once I've had a few drinks, and if I'm talking to friends, I say getting shot by that sniper is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Now, anybody who doesn't know you or taken out of context, that just seems like lunacy. But obviously, when we talk about, once again, Tom 1.0, and then the reinvention of Tom Deierlein, what does that mean? What precipitated as a result of that injury?
Yeah, I think that it's a strange thing when you first hear it, right? But I didn't die, so that was helpful that I can get away with saying that. But you also hear that a lot from cancer survivors, because, and I know this is a cliche phrase, but it's like, every day's a holiday, every meal's a feast. Like I don't get melodramatic too often, right? But we're doing this webcast and talking about reinvention. So it's, it's hard to, you just don't get as excited. You get that close to death and you just can't get that excited about traffic, too much salt on your hamburger, like spilling a drink. Like it's little things that might tee me off. Like I used to be one of those road rage people in traffic, or, very impatient on lines. And so to answer your question more directly, the reason that I think that I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and it's not that I was a horrible person before I get shot, but, I had a lot of time to reflect, right? And I think that in light of what we're talking about with TD Foundation, and I actually do a ton of work with wounded warriors, not just their families, and I mentor other wounded warriors, I mentor other veteran entrepreneurs. So I'm just leading a more selfless life, whereas I was a little more self-centered and selfish or self-focused. I'm also a lot more patient, going back to that issue. Like impatience was a major character flaw of mine. But in light of this, it's just there's very few things that really get me upset that I think are worth worrying about. Whereas, so I think I enjoy life more. And then lastly, of course, I'm married to a beautiful, wonderful woman, and I have 3 boys. I mean, I wasn't married. Well, my first wife left me when I was in a hospital in a wheelchair, but that's for another day. And I met my wife when I got back to New York City on eHarmony. So I'm a big fan of eHarmony. And we got married a year and a half later, and boom, now we're celebrating our 6th anniversary in 2 weeks, and we got 3 boys.
No,
5, 3, and 1.
And not to necessarily settle on the trauma, but obviously there's a certain level of darkness that comes with death and opportunities. And as I understand it, you were also told at that time that you would probably never walk again.
Yeah, I mean, I did get really close. I mean, but I was unconscious, so I didn't realize that. I think that periodically I'll joke about that day with some of the folks that were there because they, but yeah, I was given factor 7, which is this emergency blood coagulant, because I was bleeding to death while I was waiting to get into the ER. Like they had to cut off the painkillers because that thinned your blood. Yeah, and there's just dark days in the hospital as well. I also went into shock on a flight from Balad to Landstuhl, and there's
So it was. I mean, you were critical.
Yeah, I was given last rites.
So you were critical, and of course,
I was given last rites by a priest. So yeah, I was on knocking on the door.
But you survived that. But now you're in a situation. You're at Walter Reed. You're dealing with a change of life, whether you had done it or not. What was that process like for you, from the standpoint of kind of wrapping your head around your new reality and the challenges ahead of you, and what did that do to strengthen you?
Oh, good question. Okay. Yeah, I think Wounded Warriors, we typically call it the new normal. So you're trying to figure out what the new normal is. And I don't know, the first month was a bit of a fog, right? I was still taking a lot of morphine and then Dilaudid. But once I had some clarity, and it's also worth mentioning that I should thank my sister, who's a nurse, who was there all the time, and my best friend Pat, who was by my side during that first 30 days to really make sure that I was getting the care and attention that I needed. But yeah, once I figured out, okay, wow, this is not good. The first couple of weeks, my left leg did not move at all, so they thought maybe I wouldn't walk again. But once my left leg started getting moving, and I'm like it's starting to sink in, like, all right, you're banged up, and you have enough conversations with the doctors about what the injury is, and they're trained not to give you worst case scenario. Like they're always supposed to stay. I'm like, give it to me straight, doc. Like enough. Like stop playing around. What's the real deal? And then they do tell you, like, oh, that's So now I know why they don't do it, because even you're like, tell me, I'm a tough guy, I can take it. And then they tell you, you're like, oh, that's not good. But so I think some point during that first 30 days, I just said, okay, I got to get focused on recovering and rehabbing as best I could. And that was my mentality, is I got to get as healthy as I can. And you're also struggling to get functions back. I had a lot of, organ damage and all those things going on. So it was like, for that entire 8 months, I sort of struggled with seeing how much true function I could get back. And then it's sort of you plateau. And even though I plateaued, when I got back to New York, I still rehab for 90 minutes every day, 5 days a week, because I just didn't want to be 60 or 70 years old and say, oh, well, if you really stuck with it. But I certainly plateaued. I ran the Army 10 miler in 2008. So I got out of the hospital in May of 07, and 15 months later, I ran the Army 10 miler. So
for a man who might never walk again is running a 10 miler a year and a half later.
Yeah, and then I think it was 1 year or 2 years later. Like I'd always wanted to do a triathlon. So I'm like, but I'm not a good swimmer, So I used to be a good runner. Now, people are walking faster than I run, but which was depressing. I did a 10K in the prep, and some woman literally was walking up the hill faster than I was running it. But then I trained for a sprint triathlon, and I've done 2 sprint triathlons as well. So
So the physical side of things, obviously, there's been a huge improvement. But as you said, the transition to Tom 2.0, we'll call it, stemmed from obviously the challenges. And, I think in a lot of ways, you had already prepared for this level of grit. Your personality is one that allows you to look at this and say, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to beat this. I'm going to make this work for me.
And I was also very fortunate to have a strong network. I'm not going to lie. I had tons of friends coming to visit me all the time. My family was a constant presence there. The staff and the doctors at Walter Reed are phenomenal. Like, I'm still friends with my physical therapist from, at this point, 8 years ago. So it wasn't just me sitting in my bed having grit and deciding that I'm going to get through this. I had plenty of people there that, if I had the right attitude and positive approach to it, they were going to help get me there. But yeah, it did start in the hospital that I figured I better help others, because you did see soldiers that were struggling or families that were struggling. And if once the spiral starts, man, it's just...
So in a lot of ways, without having somebody else in an outside perspective to say, it'll be okay, you'll get through this, you end up getting inside your own head too much and it just falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I had one mother approach me because I saw her son, and his foot was just shattered, and it was all pinned and rotted. And, he's screaming and crying in the physical therapy room as you're just trying to do like slight articulation and movement of his foot. And he's trying, and he's gritting his teeth, but he's crying like a baby. And I didn't think anything of it because you saw it all the time, or at least I did. He was new. He had got, maybe he was a week in, so he didn't see that. And the mother came to see me in my room and said, would you mind coming and talking to my son? And, it helped because I was injured. I was banged up. I had to go, I was in a wheelchair, and I had to go in his room and say, hey, man, I thought you did a great job. Trust me, it gets better. I was worse than you a month ago. One more month, it'll be better. And then it'll be better the month after that. So I tried to catch him at the top of the spiral. Like, so if you're at the top and you can just pick him out before the real depression and angst.
Was part of that pep talk for you?
No. I mean, at that point, I was over the hump. And maybe the mother recognized that. I don't know. But that's, I guess, one of the things that I'm like, all right, I'm going to get through this fine. I have a calling. I'm supposed to help other people aren't getting through it fine. And if I'm fine, I got to somehow let them know that they can be fine too. So that started my involvement with other wounded warriors. I'm not saying I didn't have dark days. I mean, I had many dark days. I mean, some of the days, when I first got back to New York, there were some days I did not want to get out of bed. I mean, there were dark days with depression, but
I think there are people who don't go through injury who have dark days and probably don't have as many reasons behind it. Right.
Well, but it was one a week, then it was one a month, and but I don't have dark days.
That's fantastic. Well, and so let's get back to the good stuff. And I want to talk a little bit more about TD Foundation. Obviously, it started from humble roots like anything else. Let's talk a little bit more. You mentioned the 50 operations that were paid for. What types of programs were these? Who were you helping? What did it look like?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of, the title of these series, I think this is 17, is Reinvention. And certainly deciding to start and help run a nonprofit was a big reinvention for me. I had certainly volunteered or done charity work, but I'd never run one. TD Foundation, as I mentioned, for the first 5-6 years of our existence was really focused on Iraq and Afghanistan. And I mentioned we shipped a lot of school supplies, but we would ship them to soldiers that were there. So I could ship them to an APO address. They would get to, and the soldier would distribute it to the local school, or someone at the State Department reached out to me and I shipped them, $10,000 of school supplies, and they gave them to an orphanage. The medical cases were usually a part of a network of folks, including Gift of Life, Amman. This incredible woman, Mary Kay Satriano, was usually at the middle. The Iraqi Children's Project, Veterans Rebuilding Life, Our Children in Need International. So it was like this network of other smaller grassroots groups, And so We did everything from heart surgeries to, we did a lot of plastic surgery with Shriners because they're all still using oil lamps, and those people, there would be fires in people's houses all the time. So there are people with burns. So we've done probably, at this stage, probably 30 of those 50 are heart surgeries where we take children in Iraq or Afghanistan and fly them to Jordan or the United States. Reconstructive work for kids that got caught on the battlefield. Just this past year, we hadn't partnered with Iraqi Children's Project maybe for 3 years. And Paul Morrissey reached out to me with 2 kids that were amputees, and he needed to fly them to Boston, and we got them fitted for prosthetics.
That's fantastic.
Razia's Ray of Hope. She's a CNN hero. She runs an all-girls school outside of Kabul. I will say that again. She runs an all-girls school in Afghanistan outside of Kabul. So if you're not familiar with Razia's Ray of Hope, look at them, or just type in Razia, R-A-Z-I-A, and CNN Heroes, and you can see her story. We partnered with them, so we deliver school supplies to them each year. They've got about 500 students. TD Foundation gave them $10,000 to buy the land next to theirs, and now they're going to build a high school for all girls. So we're pretty excited about that. But now, the last few years, a couple years, I got together with my board. We said, let's bring the mission home, just like the soldiers coming home. And now we have a whole new set of partners. We do a lot of work with Code of Support, Operation Second Chance. Why am I forgetting one? Quality of Life Foundation, SOCOM, Care Coalition are some of the ones that we're partnered with now. The Station Foundation. What we do is we help the children of wounded warriors.
And I get a chance to get updates on a regular basis from you and from the organization about how you're helping these people out. Can you share with with the folks a little bit of what you're actually doing to help these families out?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, it's everything from mortgages to car payments. It's usually, the story is the soldier is usually severely wounded, is waiting some type of rating or payment from the VA or the government, or is away in a rehab facility. The wife has to quit her full-time job to take care of him as a care provider and raise her kids. So they're out of money. It's not necessarily they're mismanaging money. He's not working, she's not working, the VA hasn't paid their bills yet. So a lot of stuff I'm doing is trying to prevent veteran homelessness. Quality of Life found us last summer and we're like, hey, I see you do school supplies for kids overseas. Do you do it here? Yeah. And there were 20 families that we bought them school supplies. These folks don't have $100 to buy the markers and the notebooks and the backpack and the Kleenex and the wipes you got to provide. And I remember one mother last summer, she called me up and she said, oh, thank you, for letting me buy the school supplies. Can I buy a backpack for my kids? Of course. She goes, and I don't want to ask, but, can I buy them sneakers and pants? I was like, absolutely. And for the listeners out there, if you're like me, you got to believe that, the children of wounded warriors shouldn't have to worry about going to school in new clothes like all the other kids. And the rewarding part of that story, everyone posts on Facebook now, the kids going off to school. This is right around that time of the year. That morning at 9:30, she sent me her photos. She sent me a picture of her kids with their new clothes.
And you reposted that, which I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wonderful. But a lot of mortgage problems, a lot of utilities. We helped pay for some family to move from where they were to Florida to be near his and her parents. So they were sort of moving back home, but didn't have the money and were getting kicked out of their current apartment. We're partnered with Luke's Wings, so we fly families in to visit wounded warriors when they're being operated on. The Station Foundation, we help pay for wounded warriors and their families to go to these retreats out in Montana. We help fund the Gold Star program for Gold Star kids that lost their parents, being run by a Gold Star woman, Jaslyn Red. So we help fund the original internship and the Code Red. So I know we're running out of time, but I do want to say this. Talk about reinvention. I have a great deal of respect for these women that reinvent their relationship with their husband, their wounded warrior, and they're still raising kids. I mean, my wife is my hero trying to raise these 3 kids. We call it Fight Club. They're always 3 boys bouncing all over. But these women on no, little or no money are trying to take care of a soldier with TPI, missing limbs, PTSD, and raise 2 or 3 kids. And this is a burden that they're going to have for 10, 15 years. It's not, I speak for 8 months. And so I'd like to just give a shout out to all those women that stood by their man and are taking care of him and raising their kids the best that they can. And that's who TD Foundation wants to help, is these women and these children.
And I see them as being heroes. And anyone, as a parent who's raised 2 children myself, not myself, but actually with the help of my wife, it's the hardest job you'll ever love, basically. And to do it under that level of duress without enough resources to work from is super challenging. So the fact that TD Foundation is able to step in and provide gap insurance, for lack of a better term.
We fill the gaps where we don't do a lot of the work ourselves. Like, we really are financing CODA support, or our military kids, or Quality of Life, or Operation Second Chance. They bring us the cases, they vet them, they have case workers, and we just fund the cases. So it's another shout out to our network, which I guess if the title of here is Reinvention, as you're reinventing yourself, as you're going out on whatever journey it is, surround yourself with friends, surround yourself with people on the same mission as you, surround yourself with people that have those same values and that same focus. It'll make your reinvention better if you surround yourself with a group of people that can help you along the way. And that's what these partners of TD Foundation do.
Absolutely. And obviously kudos to you and your team for the amazing things you're doing to really dramatically change the lives of other people. Now, one last thing I want to talk about really quickly, and we'll get to a few questions, is the idea of Thundercat. And if you could just share a little bit of what you're doing, because I know you're going to be pretty humble about this and all, but you guys are getting some pretty serious ink these days. On top of everything else that you're doing, of course, with the nonprofit, you don't strike me as the kind of guy who's spending a lot of time at home watching TV. You're a really busy human being, and you're doing some pretty amazing things. Share with the viewers what Thundercat is, what you guys are doing, and some of the amazing things you're getting involved in these days.
So yeah, we're getting a little bit ink. So I guess a shout out to Sarah Boltz, who's in charge of our marketing. So Thundercat, my call sign in Baghdad was Thundercat 6. So hence the name Thundercat Technology. I was a co-founder, but it was really my business partners that got this thing going and off the ground while I was still in New York doing some digital media work. And I got to give a real shout out to Keith McMeans, my business partner, who was really the brains and the muscle behind those early days of Thundercat, building it out. What Thundercat does is we're a VAR, evaluated reseller, and people try and make it sexy, like solution provider, systems integrator. We resell other people's products. And it's any of the technologies that go in and around a data center. So a lot of data storage, networking, obviously cybersecurity, applications. And the other thing that makes us a little unique is we focus, like 99% of our business is selling to the federal government. So, DOD, Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, the White House, we just did, IRS, Department of Commerce, the VA, so it's all these agencies in the Fed and the companies based in Reston, Virginia. We have been getting a lot of ink, and it's funny. I did an interview yesterday with the Washington Business Journal, and they said, why are you successful? And you're not allowed to say your people. I'm like, I know it's cliche, but it is. Like, we don't have any intellectual property. We don't manufacture anything. Like, we literally resell other people's ideas. Like, we resell other people. Fundamentally, what makes Thundercat special are the employees. It's an all-star only model. We have 50 folks in our company. We've only had 54 in our 8-year history. Like, people come and we take care of them, and people stay. And I'm very blessed with a team of folks. So I laugh. You say, oh yeah, we got a lot of ink. We were on ink, literally Inc. 5000 4 years in a row. A lot of high growth lists, but it's really because of my folks that are just absolutely the best of the best.
Well, and obviously continued success to you. If anybody has any questions to add to the conversation, please feel free to go into the Q&A and type them in, and we will share them with Tom. We have a couple in here, but basically, I think we've covered a lot. The idea of how Thundercats. How active are you between your day job at Thundercat and the TD Foundation? It sounds to me like you have two full-time jobs.
Yeah, well, I think no, Thundercat is my real job. Like, I would say 9 to 5, but it's not. I'm working 50 to 60-hour weeks. TD Foundation, once again, the operations is through the partners. So they present a case, we say yes or no, you mail a check. We do events, and my board of directors is phenomenal. Like Chris Hogan right now is organizing a golf outing. Matt Wasserloff does major golf outings for us each year. And then we have the gala in December. So there are certain days where I might spend 2 hours on TD Foundation, then I don't do anything for a week. And the good news is I can do it at 7 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. There's not like a TD Foundation emergency. Right. So I just find a rhythm. But no, Thundercat, obviously keeps the lights on and pays the bills. So that's what I spend 95% of my time doing.
If people wanted to get involved in helping support TD Foundation and in turn supporting returning vets, how can they do this? What are the channels they can go through to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's just tdfoundation@hotmail.com. TD as in touchdown, foundation@hotmail.com. I know that's a bit of a legacy email address, but tdfoundation@hotmail.com or tdfoundation.org. Right, it's a nonprofit, so tdfoundation.org. But if you're interested in getting involved, right, there's ways that you can volunteer. You could help connect us with other nonprofits that share our mission. You could do a fundraiser, and that'd be great. Or, the number one way that people can get involved is provide some funding, or reach out to me directly, and we can put you in touch with Quality of Life. We can put you in touch with Luke's Wings or something that may be interesting to you to be involved in. But do please reach out if this is something that you're passionate about. Clearly, just these women are really, really gritty. We're talking about reinventing. They reinvented who they are and what their relationship is and what their life is going to be like for the next decade or so. Yeah. And so these women and their children deserve our support. I'm sorry.
Very few of them.
I'm going to do a pitch there. So if you want to get involved, tdfoundation.org.
But I imagine very few of these women, jumped into a marriage thinking this is what the future looked like. This is not the idyllic idea of the house, the White House on the hill, and the happily ever after. This is a hard.
And I don't have the stat, but the fact that my wife walked out on me while I was in a wheelchair is not unusual. That stat is alarmingly high. So 1, they stuck around, and 2, they're just making do day to day in a grind, and I love them. Everyone.
That's challenging. One of the questions that's come in, and I think this is an interesting one, and I'm not sure how easy it is to answer it, but the question was, where did your drive come from when you were 13? I mean, is this, okay, so one of 9 children, you might assume there's a little bit of competition somewhere along the way. At least you learn how to kind of stand up for yourself. But is this a unique thing to Tom Deierlein? Is this just kind of nature of who you are, or is this a learned approach to your life?
I think it's learned. I mean, I think that, as I mentioned, I'm one of 9, but you lined up my brothers and sisters. There's varying degrees of resilience or grit. I certainly, my sister was a straight A student. My brother was a straight A student. They were a lot smarter than I was, so I had to work harder to get the same grades. But no, I've been talking a lot. I mentioned earlier, Angela Duckworth does a lot of research on the concept of grit. And one of her things now is, can it be taught? Can it, be built in? So she and I have been having some conversations about my parents. And I think that I do believe it was learned. I don't think I came out of the womb this ambitious, driven person. But I think people that have grit learn it. And I think that if you're 30, you could just decide to be more gritty. If you're 70, you can just decide to be more gritty. I don't think that it has to be learned when you're very young.
No, when you
so I do want to answer the question. What I attributed it to, because I thought about it long and hard, because Dr. Duckworth was asking me, she wanted to know. And I think that the key was, my parents supported me. They didn't help me. They supported me if I set a goal. They convinced me I could do it. They gave me the confidence. They gave me the reason, but they didn't actively ever help me. Like, if I want to do something, I had to get it done.
Right.
But I think that you can, I don't think, like I said, I think at any age you can just make a decision. The next time you're thinking about quitting, don't do it and see. And then you're thinking about quitting again the next day, don't do it and then see. And eventually you're going to, I guess I'm that believer that like most people quit when they're 95% of the way there, and they just get so, the despair kicks in and they don't realize they only got 5%, right? Like Einstein said, I'm wrong 99 times, the 100th time I'm right.
Right.
Like you just gotta keep pushing.
There's a great quote on that from I think Winston Churchill, who said, and I quote, "Never, never, never, never give up." And so your definition of grit is really persistence. It's just the idea of life's going to knock you on your butt, and you have a couple of choices. One, you can curl up in the fetal position and accomplish nothing, or you can continue to get up every time and say, "I just learned something important," and use that to help you move forward.
Yeah, I think it fundamentally comes down to goals. Like each time I'd set a goal. Like the first time I went to Ranger School, I failed the push-up test. Second time I went to Ranger School, I failed the Florida phase. I had to redo it. It's setting a meaningful goal. And if you're setting really meaningful goals, like not like I want to go down to the store and get a soda, like, well, that's not a goal. Like if you're setting a long-term meaningful goal, two things are true. One, it's going to be hard. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be failures along the way. And the second thing is, if it were easy, everyone would do it.
Sure.
So you have to go in with a mentality that I will not stop until this is complete. And it's tricky, right? For entrepreneurs, it's a harder question. Like, at what point is your idea not a business? And because I'm always like, drive until you win.
Sometimes
you're living in debt, and your credit cards are maxed. Maybe your idea wasn't, So I don't know where that line is, but for folks listening here about reinvention, and you've got this idea in your head that you need to do something different in your life and reinvent your career, your personal relationships, reinvent something about what you're doing, make grit a part of it. And go type into Google, Angela Duckworth Grit TEDx Blue. It's about an 18-minute video. Save that video, watch it over and over again. You just got to have that drive. You got to have that resilience, and you got to never quit.
And as part of reinvention, I mean, the challenge that we all face is that there's a certain amount of the unknown. We don't get this crystal ball that tells us what our future looks like. We are stuck with the resources that we have available to us. Some of us are stuck with certain aspects of our lifestyle that we have to learn to work with. But I think Tom brings up some fantastic points, and that is, the challenges that we all face, unfortunately or fortunately, once you talk to enough people, you realize how universal they are. You're not unique. You're not the other one going through hard times. And obviously, in the case of what we're dealing here, especially with parents who are raising children and dealing with returning veterans at the same time, it's a much harder task than most of us are ever going to face. There are times when I think, in all fairness, we have to get over our own bad selves and just realize that challenges are going to happen. That's part of life. And anything that's worth going for is worth going for, and not giving up is a huge part of making anything in your life that's meaningful happen.
I think you've made a great point, Spider, which is I am not special. Trust me. Anyone that knows me is not special. I was joking that maybe my wife was going to join the webcast and go, like, don't listen to this guy. He's full of crap. Like, trust me, this guy is not special.
No,
but it is, and that's the cool thing about grit. Or when you're thinking about reinvention, like, just decide you're gonna do it.
Well,
the mentality there that you don't have to be special. You don't have to be super smart, super good looking, super talented. You just gotta not quit.
So we'll agree you're not special, but I think what you're doing is phenomenal, and it's extraordinary. And the fact that you are willing to stand up and look, you could be doing a lot of other things with your free time instead of helping other people. And I think to acknowledge, and it's okay, that what you're doing is extraordinary, because the average person would not do it and would not know how to even get started doing it. Tom, you're making the world a better place in so many ways through your efforts.
That's kind of you to say that.
Well, I think, those of us who have supported you through the foundation and your rebuilding and your reinvention acknowledge that. So anyway, I can't thank you enough for being my guest tonight, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and I appreciate it. And good luck on your own reinvention journey. Thanks everybody. Good night.
So I just want to put up, I have another bit of business here. So first of all, if you want to contact Tom, Tom Deierlein at Gmail will probably do the trick. We're going old school there again. He's also can be found on Twitter at Tom Deierlein, at Tom Deierlein. And also for us, if you want to hear what we're doing here at Reinvention Works, we ran into just a problem with the length of our name. So you have to go and look at Reinvention Work. You'll find us there on Twitter. Also, I want to just mention that next week I'll be talking with Melinda Emerson, who is America's #1 small business expert, and she's a CEO and has written a best-selling book on what she does, and we'll talk a little bit more about Reinvention Weekend. Okay, so we'll be doing that next week. So next Wednesday at 8:30, please join us. Register, tell your friends, all that good stuff. So
am I still on?
Yeah, I'm going to put you. I'm going to start sharing.
If somebody reaches out to me on that email, just put Reinvention or Reinvention Works in the title, because I obviously don't know your name, and you don't want me to delete it as spam. So if you're going to reach out to me, either put TD Foundation or Reinvention Works in the title of your email, and that way I'll open it and know it's not spam. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Tom. I really appreciate your time tonight. Hey, everybody. Once again, we're out of time, but really appreciate you participating tonight. Hopefully, we'll get some feedback on this, and we'll get the video up to share with the folks who couldn't make it tonight. Anyway, Spider Graham, I had a wonderful time, and we'll catch everyone real soon. Thanks so much.